I think this is genuinely the most tired I've been in a long time. You see, I go through phases of sleep, you know. My sleep schedule changes all the time, and as a result, I'll have days where I'm more tired than others, but there's certain things that we do where our body just kind of shuts down. One of them is exercising. When people exercise, they get tired. For me, I kind of wish I got energy from speaking to people the way that I used to. Now, that isn't to say that I don't enjoy it. I enjoy speaking to people a lot. It's one of my favorite things to do. But there's this kind of energy that I would receive when I did it, year back, 2 years back, where it was just such a new and fun experience that, you know, by the end of the conversation, I would end up feeling more energy than I did when I entered the conversation. And that was what made it special. But before that point, I had never felt that way. And I think the reason I felt this way at the time was because it was just so new to me. The idea of having friends who like the same things as you, or even have at least sort of a similar worldview, that when I would go into these conversations, I felt so much excitement that the excitement stayed there afterwards. And even in that period of my life, it started waning where I would do like 5, 6 hour calls. And by the end, I would have a lot of energy sometimes, but other times I'd feel the total opposite. Um, Nowadays, within the last 8 months, I've continued to feel extremely tired after each call that I do. And it's one of those things where the shift between who you used to be for a very short period in the grand scheme of things, to who you are now, like the shift is so large that it's almost kind of astounding. And I think it was ultimately born out of the fact that I spent so long without talking to people that when it was new, it was really new. You know, I was in a call today, um, and I had a lot of fun, a lot of fun in that call. By the time I got out, I just laid down on this bed, didn't listen to any music, didn't have anything on in the background. I just laid down, and it felt like I was getting something back, some kind of juice, some kind of energy. Like I was almost decompressing as I was laying in the bed. I've found myself doing this more and more often lately, whether I'm speaking to people or not. You know, in the later half of 2018, I almost had to speak to people, or at the very least have a YouTube video on in the background, because the thoughts in my mind I didn't want to think about. The feelings that I was feeling I didn't want to be concerned about, so I would try to use external stimulus like conversation, podcasts, and stuff like that to make it to where I wasn't thinking about the depression I was feeling and the sadness. But nowadays, I feel the exact opposite, where when I lay down without any noise whatsoever, it's like I'm at peace. It's like the thoughts that are going through my mind can't hurt me. They're not points of concern, they just kind of exist. Whereas before, when I would lay down just to go to sleep at night, it would be the single most terrifying thing to me. Literally, it was, because because I didn't want to be thinking about all of the depressive feelings I was feeling and all of the existential thoughts that were in the back of my mind. I don't really feel that way anymore. And there was throughout most of my life, I've kind of enjoyed just laying down after speaking to people for too long or just when I need to relax. Just letting the thoughts flow, not really commanding the thoughts, not really directing them in a certain direction, just letting the thoughts flow, move about in their own way. Or maybe not having any thoughts at all, just focusing on your own breathing, just laying there in the dark. I spend a lot of time in the dark. I don't like the sunlight particularly that much. There's a reason why I put a big curtain over the window, but I don't like the light from my light either. It's the only times I tend to have the light on are when I'm doing something that specifically needs it, or if I'm recording a language journey video, I don't do those in the dark because I like thematic consistency. Um, but I almost never have the light on in my room. I do almost everything in the dark because it hurts my eyes to see the light. Not in a negative way. It's not like I feel worse when I have the light on. Or, no, excuse me, it's not like I feel worse when I have the light off. But I do feel worse when I have the light on. And so I end up not wanting to have it turned on through the majority of the time because I just genuinely feel better when it's always off. I've seen a lot of people talk on forums about, the degradation of their eyesight and how they feel more depressed when they have the light off all the time, or this kind of virtue signaling about needing vitamin D and stuff. So I don't feel any of that. I don't feel worse because I have the light off all the time. I feel happier because it makes me feel more relaxed, And I lay down on the bed and I just feel relaxed. Just feel at peace. I spend about 2 or 3 hours just laying like this. And it makes me feel at home. It makes me feel nice. When I was going really, really intense with the age adding and having the Japanese language on all of the time, it felt almost like part of my energy was being exhausted. Now I only have it on about half of the time, maybe 75%, if I'm not doing something else, because I want to be able to lay at peace like this every now and again. Especially after I had a conversation with someone. I'll end up laying down afterwards because it's like my entire body feels exhausted. Like, man, I spent all this time focusing on these words that I was saying and laughing with this person, man. It's too much. I'll just lay down. But it doesn't feel bad. That's the thing. It just feels like I have less energy, you know? That's the hard thing to explain about being a solitary person like this, is that people will look at it and they'll say, how could you possibly do this? Isn't it like human nature to want to go around people all the time and be in the sunlight and stuff? But like, I've lived like this through most of my life. And the times in which I was really, really depressed were always the times in which bad things were happening. It was just that bad things were always happening. Now that, the conditions that I live in are better, I don't feel the same way. People believe that depression and mental illness is linked to the amount of serotonin in your brain or whatever. It's linked to chemicals and stuff. But there's a lot more experimental research coming out that, you know, many people have actually tried to suppress to keep from coming out because so much of psychological research is funded by specific institutions that have hegemony over psychological research. But there's more research that's come out that's suggested that there's a far, far greater link to conditions, to poverty, to upbringing when it comes to how depression and mental illness develops. If you change the conditions, you change the game. If someone lives in a better place than they used to, they live with better people, they have uh, better social better social relations. They're gonna feel better. If you grow up constantly being told that you're depressed, you're probably going to be depressed. That's why a lot of the time doctors, if they get a younger person who's experiencing depressive symptoms, they won't tell them you're depressed. They'll tell them you're sad today or how are you feeling today? And the reason why is that if you tell someone that they're depressed, they're going to make it part of their identity. If they make it part of their identity, then it's far, far, far less likely to go away. That's why when you experience a problem, however chronic it may be, you have to experience it on a day-to-day basis and say, how am I feeling today? How can I remove this feeling? How can I improve upon that, A lot of the time it is just subject to conditions. Poverty will lead to people feeling this way. Your job will lead you to feeling this way. Family members, and these types of things. It's not always some kind of magical genetic chemical imbalance. It's just theory. It's just a theory. Whereas with, actual material things that happen in reality, we can quantify those and observe them. And I think that's one of the main reasons why for the last, for the last chunk of months, I haven't felt depressed because there hasn't been any reason to. There hasn't been any big grand condition that would make me feel that way. Maybe I'm lucky, I don't know. But I'm really happy that I can lay in my bed again after talking to people. Because before it was like all of my energy was just constantly being used up. And I felt like I had to. Like I would constantly force myself to be in calls because I didn't want to hear my thoughts. Because if I heard my thoughts, I would be sad. Because my thoughts were all sad. I think now that I've found a sort of confidence in what it is that I do here and who I am, I've found friends who I can connect with and live in a place that's stable, doesn't have so much turmoil, and have experienced sadness so many times that sadness is not a new thing to me, and I know how to deal with it, and it doesn't feel scary if it were to show up. That I can lay down and I can feel at peace the way that I did however many years ago after a conversation or just when I needed to. I will never forget how valuable that is. That juice that I get back when I lay down. The human body or the human experience really is an amazing thing in some ways. It's little things like this that I find appreciation for and can firmly say that it makes it pretty all right to be a human being. It's like I'm gonna fall asleep, but I'm really not, because I went to sleep at 3 or 4 a.m. last night, so I don't think I'm gonna fall asleep, but that relaxed feeling, it's like its own kind of drug, you know? Maybe I was just barred from it when I was that sad. I couldn't have it because I was too scared of it or something. I don't know. Too many things going on up there. Even when you lay down, it's like overload. So you just distract yourself with more games or more people or more videos, but the real sign of strength and peace is shown when you can lay down just by yourself for a few hours. I remember this quote. It was like, most of humanity's problems come from not being able to sit down in a room alone. And I think I agree with that, because I was experiencing a lot of problems as a result of not being able to be by myself, or to just not constantly be distracted. I was always trying to be distracted instead of trying to actually address the problem, because I didn't think the problem could be fixed. Not entirely, you know. But I feel very lucky for my conditions changing and addressing what was going on, you know. I feel very lucky to be someone who can be by themselves, because really, I wouldn't have it any other way.